Hello everyone, welcome to today's presentation. I'm still happy to have you here. Today, this workshop is about how to create amazing photos and videos on your smartphone. So who is this workshop for? This workshop is for anyone. Anyone looking to improve their photo or video skills. Anyone that just want to post better pictures of photos online, or just capture those special moments in their lives. So what will you get out of this presentation? What I'm aiming for is that you leave this workshop and feel empowered, knowing that you have the confidence and the ability to create better pictures and photos. So what I'm going to use is something called the Pareto Principle, where I just focus on just a few guidelines and basic tips that I believe will give you the majority of your success. So what 20% can we focus on that will give us the 80% of that improvement in our ability to make amazing photos and amazing videos? As an overview, we're going to talk about what makes a good picture. We're going to talk about storytelling. We're going to talk about a couple of basic tips, and then we'll cover some of my favorite composition guidelines. And then apps that I use that I think might help you in your journey to become an amazing person who can take photos and videos. So while I'll cover all these things, I don't want you to get lost around the process. Just take a few of the things that I'll teach today and then apply them. And then after you become good at those things, come back and learn the others. So again, you don't have to do everything that I teach you today in this workshop. Just take the ones that you really like and then start using those. Once you become confident and good at those, come back, watch it again, and then apply the other ideas or guidelines or the basic tips that I provide along the way. So before we go on, I want to tell you a little bit about me. Hi, my name is Tony. I've been working in digital media marketing it's going on almost, I can't believe it, almost 2 decades now. I enjoy working in digital marketing. I love strategy. I love working in social media. But in addition to that, I have a background as a Fulbright scholar where I spent several years in China. I'm proficient in Chinese, and currently I'm learning Mandarin. I'm not learning Mandarin. I'm learning Tagalog. In addition to that, I like to paint and I like to draw. So let's forget about me. Let's focus more on you. So what makes some videos and photos better than others? So this is going to be a little test. We're going to test out your ability, if you can tell the difference of what's good and what's bad when it comes to a photo. So here's a scene, same scene. I want you to tell me, well, you can't really tell me because I'm not really there, but think which one is better than the other. I'll give you a moment. Done. So which one of these photos are better? Obviously, the one on the left is better. Now, I want you to think about why. Now, as you're thinking about that, we're going to move on to the next one. Is this a good photo? Think to yourself, is this good? And think to yourself, why and why not? And then I want you to think about, how do you know if something is good and something's not good when it comes to a photo? Well, the reason you know the difference is that as humans, we innately can see balance in nature. We're kind of just built that way. So we can tell when a photo or video is good, but the issue is there's a disconnect between seeing what's good and then being able to then produce that same thing. So this workshop is made to give you the skill set that allows you to bridge that gap of not only being able to see what is good, but then to also produce that in your own photos and videos. So the first concept we're going to cover is the idea of storytelling. So when you take a photo, the first thing you need to think about is what story you're trying to tell. So a great way to do, or a great thing to use to do this, is think about the who, what, when, where, and why. And think about adding as many of those elements to your photo as you can. So let's take, for example, this photo. We have this gentleman, he's standing, looking off into the ocean. There's an ocean back there. You have it, I think it's cold. He has a jacket on, and it looks like he's been hiking, like he got hiking gear. He's recording video. Maybe he's thinking about days of yarn. Who knows, right? But he's looking off into the distance, and it looks like it's either the start of a day or the end of the day. So you have the dusk. Who knows, right? But you've got so many elements here, a lot of the who, what, when, where, and why that's already added to this image. So it gives you a lot more story. As they say, right? A picture is worth 1,000 words. So have you thought about what story are those words telling? So here's another example as you think about what I just said. What story is this trying to tell? That is a bad picture? No, right? But this is a very common picture that we all take of someone standing in front of something and we focus on them. I know it's cold. I know it's snowing. I know he's smiling, but I have no context of what's going on there. So this is a great example of a picture not telling a story and thus becoming something that's boring or that's very basic, right? So the more you can add in the who, what, when, where, and why into your photo or even your video, the better and the more interesting it will become. So let's cover some of these basic tips that I mentioned earlier that if you apply these right now, you would immediately become a better photographer or a videographer. So you apply these few things, you will already have some things that will make you better at what you're already doing. So let's talk about your lens. This is the fundamental mistake that many people make when they're out and they're recording video or taking photos. They forget to always clean their lens. You have to clean your lens because no matter what techniques you try, no matter how great you are at taking photos, if your screen has smudges and is dirty, it will be picked up in your photos and in your video. So make sure you always have a cloth or even your shirt and clean the lens or the lenses in this case of your camera. Now let's talk about lighting, which is also extremely important. So one of the great ways of take photos is using natural light, but you gotta know when the best time of day of doing that. Now, there's a lot of equipment you can buy to take pictures in almost any kind of lighting, but a lot of times we don't have that equipment. So the two things I want to share with you is the idea of golden hour and overcast days. So first, golden hour is a time during the morning or the evening where the sun is at its golden hue, its golden peak, and produce a very soft light, as you can see in this photo, that is really good for photos. Now, taking a photo at noon in the sun when the sun's shining in your face and you're like this, it's so bright, is not a great photo. It's not very flattering. But during that golden hour is a perfect time to take a photo. Now, you're probably asking yourself, when is golden hour? Simply go on your phone, do a search for golden hour, and it's going to give you the time of day when it's the golden hour in your area. Next, overcast days, so basically cloudy days, is a great day to take a photo. Why is that? Because the clouds act as a natural diffuser when it comes to the sun. So it creates a natural balance of light and a natural balance of lighting on your face to take a photo or record video. So next time there's a cloudy day, don't just stay in the house, but go out and try to take photos of yourselves or others, and you're going to see exactly what I mean. Now, in addition to that, let's talk about artificial lighting. Like right now, I'm using what's called a ring light. So it's a light about this big that goes on top of my phone, or in this case, my laptop or what have you. So they cost about $5, $10, $15, maybe $20. You can get one of these pretty cheaply and take them wherever you go. And I like using them particularly at daytime because it allows me to add a little bit extra light onto my subject. So again, getting a simple ring light or like a larger grid light, something portable is great to have when you're out taking photos, doing videos, or going to events. So again, they're cheap to have, and you should have one in your car or in your purse as you go throughout your day. Another lighting tip I want to talk about is that of position. Where do you place your subject in relation to your lighting source? So you usually want to make sure that your lighting source is in front of you. Look at these two images. on the left and on the right. I took this image at exactly the same time. All I did was turn around in a circle. As you can see with the light source in front of you, this is a much more clear picture than the one on the right. The one on the right with the light source behind you casts a shadow over the subject. So this is something that I see often in photos that is easy to avoid. No matter if it's our artificial light or if it's a natural light source, make sure that the lighting is in front of your subject or at least on the side. Just try to avoid having behind unless you purposely are trying to go for a silhouette or do a very unique, special photo. But typically when we're taking our photos, we want that light source in front of our subject. The next thing I want to talk to you about is focus and exposure. Most smartphones today have the ability to lock your focus and your exposure. So focus, as you already know, is just focuses in on the subject or where you point. So all you do is take your finger, tap your screen, and when you tap it, your phone will focus there. Now, when you do your exposure, you do the same thing, but then you, on the right, you slide up and down, and that will make the photo lighter or darker based upon where its focus is located. So what you'll want to do is once you have your subject in sight of exactly where you want them, you put your finger on your screen and you hold it for, 2 seconds, and it will say AE/AF lock. That means that particular focus and exposure is locked in. And you want to do that every time you take a photo, because what ends up happening is that just by shaking your arm or moving a little bit, your focus and exposure could move. So say you have it there, you have a focus, you have exposure, it's light in a certain way. If it's not locked in, just by a little movement, that particular exposure can change based on the light source. So it's a very simple thing to do that many people don't think about doing. And that's about stability. Often I find people taking photos holding their hands out in this kind of way, right? Now, there's no way to prevent your hands from lightly shaking when your arms are out that way. So one thing you want to try to do is find ways to really stabilize your photos or video. Now, there's a lot of equipment available, as you probably are aware. You can buy a tripod or manual gimbal you put your phone on that would provide that stabilization. But you can also take a bunch of books and lean your phone on something. But most of the time, we don't have equipment. When you're out walking around, you see something you want to take a photo of. So one of the easiest things you can do is similar to what this young lady is doing in this picture. You can take your phone and take your elbows and pull your elbows in tightly against your torso, and then hold your camera in this fashion. By pulling your elbows in and holding them to your body like that, it will stabilize your arms from moving and shaking. And it will help you create better photos and much more clear video by doing this way. Again, put your phone in your hand, take your elbows down, and press them against your torso. And in that way, you will have a much more stable video or photo. Now, this is very specific towards, obviously, recordings, because there's no sound when it comes to photos. So when it comes to recording, I always recommend that you use a lapel mic or some other kind of mic, because when it comes to any recording, it needs to have good video, but also very clear audio. There's nothing worse than watching a video where the audio is terrible. And all you have to do is spend a couple of bucks, 10, 15, 20, for a simple lapel mic like I'm using right now. Or you can buy what's called directional mic. They sell small ones you can actually stick to your smartphone. And that you can stick and point towards your subject, and it can pick up very good sound. So again, if you're going to be recording video, then you want to make sure you have some sort of lapel mic if you want to capture the sound. The question of vertical versus horizontal. What should you do? Should your phone be vertical? Should it be horizontal? What am I going to do with this crazy thing? Well, here's some very fast and simple rules that you can use. If you're making video for YouTube or Instagram video, just do it in landscape or horizontal. If you're going to do YouTube stories, Instagram stories, LinkedIn hat stories, Twitter has something similar to that. Facebook has stories. Then go vertical. If you're going to do an Instagram feed, then do it in a square. The fun stuff, guidelines. So we're talking compositions, angles, and shots. Oh my. So the first thing I want to talk about is the rule of thirds. When it comes to composition, the rule of thirds has many benefits. One, is very easy to create, and it helps you really balance out whatever you're trying to take a photo of. Two, it comes standard in most smartphones. So what I mean by that, if you take your phone and you open it, you go to your camera. This is specific for Samsung and Motorola phones. If you go there and you open your camera and you go into your settings, then you can scroll and you'll see the word grid. Go to that and turn that on. Once you do that, on your screen, you'll have what you see in front of you, these lines, which is called the rule of thirds. Now, the iPhone is a little different. For the iPhone, you had to go to your home screen, hit settings, then go and find your camera in terms of under your settings, and in that scroll down and hit grid. That will turn your grid on. If you have not been using the rule of third grid in your phone, then you've just really been guessing on what makes a balanced and good photo. This grid needs to be on at all times because it would immediately help you understand where to focus your subject in your photo and help you make it balanced. So as you see in front of you, there's white lines and there's yellow lines. Question, which line looks better when it comes to the subject in the photo? Is the yellow line right or is the white line right? You guessed it. Obviously, it's the white line. And that's what the rule of thirds does. As you look at this photo, you see the balance of where the subject is located in that crosshair. And so when you do your own photography, you want to make sure that your subject lands somewhere in those four crosshairs. That would automatically give some sense of balance and structure to the photo you're doing. In addition to that, a great thing about the rule of thirds is that it's great for video. So when you're recording yourself, say you're doing something for YouTube or send it to a friend or family or doing something for like Facebook stories, who knows? If you're recording your video, you want to make sure that your eye line is on that top horizontal line, be it vertical or horizontal, whatever that top line is, make sure your eyes are across that line when you do your videos. Now we're getting a little bit more complex. The rule of thirds comes standard on most smartphones. So go ahead and turn that on. But now there's other compositions. Actually, there's a lot of compositions you can use to make more interesting and dynamic photos. I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm going to talk about a few that I particularly enjoy. One is called the Fibonacci Sequence, or also known as the golden ratio. So what is that? Well, the Fibonacci sequence is, each number in a sequence is a sum of two numbers that precede it. So the sequence goes something like 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2 makes 3, 2, 3 makes 5, 5, 3 makes 8, 5, 8 makes 13, 8, 13 makes 21, 13, 21 makes 20, 13, 21 makes 34, and so on. And what's interesting about this sequence is that biologists and physicists have found this sequence throughout nature. For some reason, it just exists everywhere. Kind of a little bit spooky, when you think about it. So what they've noticed is that by using the sequence in terms of photography, it creates this interesting spiral and this curve, as you see in this particular image. What it does when it comes to photography is that it provides a sense of balance and chaos. And a couple of more interesting things about this Fibonacci sequence, that they say that the pyramids of Giza used the Fibonacci sequence. In addition to that, it's found in a Mona Lisa and the Last Supper painted by Leonardo da Vinci. So apparently this is a very powerful tool that's been used throughout architecture and art for thousands of years. So here's an example of how the Fibonacci spiral or sequence or golden ratio has been used with the Mona Lisa. So when it comes to the Fibonacci sequence or the Fibonacci spiral, is that it's not just one way of looking at it. You can actually change it to 8 different directions. And what it does, it helps emphasize movement in the photo or video, or it provides a natural sense of curvature to the image. Or if it's seen as very chaotic, it kind of helps you follow the movement to a particular end line, a resting point. Now, I just said a lot of stuff that probably makes no sense to you. So what I have here are some examples to help you understand better. So here are a couple of images. The one on the left, you have the young child, and you see how your eyes are drawn to that area. That's the Fibonacci sequence there. On the right, you have the gentleman with the camera taking a picture upwards toward this other individual. Again, Fibonacci sequence. But the next one I think is a very clear, kind of give you a clear understanding of how to use this particular grid or guideline. Look at this composition on the right and on the left. So on the left, this image, but you see how your eye is drawn to this subject. And you see how the Fibonacci spiral is used to draw you there. Next is called the Phi Grid. Now the Phi Grid is still built on the idea of that Fibonacci sequence, but it's much more a simpler process. It's just a grid line. And what's amazing about it is that it's somewhat similar to the rule of thirds, but what it does, it creates a more natural look. And honestly, it helps whatever your subject is stand out more and makes it a little bit more unique. So what do I mean by that? Well, look at this photo. I love this photo. What you have here is because these lines are more narrow on both sides, vertically and horizontally, it really centers their subject in the photo and pulls them in. If you were doing a rule of thirds, these lines will be more balanced. The subject in your photo will be more placed outwards rather than more central to the image. Here's another example of what I mean. So you see here how the subjects are in the middle of the photo. If this was the rule of thirds, it'd be wider and it'll be kind of pulled out and this will be cropped more. So again, it helps centralizes your subjects when it comes to your photo you take or video. Now this is something different. When it comes to compositions, I think negative space is a fantastic way of doing photos because sometimes less is more. And doing this, like I like to take and deal with negative space when I'm doing something like a mural in the background and have a subject standing in front of a mural. That's a great way to use negative space. So if you haven't done it before, try to take some photos this way and really focus on, placing your subject somewhere on the Phi Grid or the golden ratio or on the rules of thirds and have like the rest of the scene be more plain and basic. And you'll come up with some very interesting things. This is my favorite composition, which is Dutch angles. I get bored easily when I take photos, so I like to do different things and change the way I hold my camera to try to find something unique or special about the subject I'm taking a photo of. So what makes a Dutch angle really interesting is that it allows you to pull in more information into a scene. Remember, we talked about the who, what, when, where, and why. And this really applies to this photo. Let me tell you how. So with this image turned to the side, I was able to capture the outside and the inside of this area. If this was in a traditional way, in a straight, then all you will be able to see, or all I would have been able to take a picture of really, is just the floor and the ceiling and not the outside. But because I turned it to the side, I was able to pull in more from where I was when I took this photo. So from this, you have more information. You have, like, there's mountains. You can see that the sky is clear and it's daytime, right? It's not cloudy. You can see the type of plants that are there. You can see a lot more information that tells you a lot more about what's going on. And again, the more information you can tell in terms of your photo, then the more interesting it becomes, because you're letting people know, like, what's the story behind this? Another thing that I enjoy is using the portrait mode, but not just for portraits of people, but from any close-up shot. So in this one, I applied two things. I applied the golden ratio, and in this photo, I applied two things. I applied the Dutch angle, and I applied the portrait mode. So again, as you see here, I have the camera tilted, so it allowed me to capture more of the scene, not just the cake, but two cakes and the cones and the balloons. There's a lot more information in here to give better context, what makes a better story. Using the portrait mode, I can focus in on a two sweet that's on top of the cake and focus on that and blur out the background, making a very beautiful photo. So again, if you haven't tried it, use portrait mode for more than just taking pictures of people, but take pictures of things. So let's talk about editing. Now, I've shared these different ideas, the Fibonacci, the Phi Grid, the rules of thirds, yada, yada, yada. Now, there is technology you can purchase, apps you can buy that will apply these grid lines on your photo so you don't have to think about it. But if you're doing this and you're not trying to pay for extra apps, the best thing you can try to do is use the rule of third grid that comes on your native camera. Always use that, and try your best to use that to balance out your photo, because I really believe in saving time when it comes to taking photos and doing video, because you don't want to be spending a lot of time editing 100 different pictures. So try to capture your picture as good as you can using your focus, using your exposure, understanding your lighting, and using that grid on your phone to really get a good photo so you don't have to think about it later. However, if you do want to edit your photos and your video, the apps that you could use specifically are, one, again, your camera on your phone already has your ability. When you edit it, it's going to apply the rule of thirds, so that's fine. But if you want to use the Fibonacci sequence or ratio, or you want to use the Phi Grid or the many other compositions that you can use, then the app called the Wise app, or the Wise camera and the Wise photo, are very good for that. They cost about $4.99 each, but I think they're very useful and they'll be worth the money. If you're thinking about applying that focus, that portrait effect to your photos they've taken before, there's an app called the Focus app. So what it does is allows you to apply that portrait effect to images that didn't have it. So again, those are apps I would recommend for the post editing process. But again, I want to reiterate, try to take your photos in the composition that you want, so you don't have to worry about editing it later. So here's an example of one of those apps I was talking about. So this is the Wise photo or camera app. It applied the Fibonacci to my screen, so I have to worry about editing it later. It's already there. So that's what's really amazing about this particular app. So when it comes to other apps I would recommend, here's a list. So in terms of photos, Snapseed is a very good app of changing various elements of your photos. So you think about editing and you need something that's free, you don't want to pay for or have extra costs, I would highly recommend the Snapseed app. But if you have access to Adobe Suite, then download Lightroom. It is amazing. And then also there's Photoshop, Photoshop Mix, Photoshop Fix, and a few others that you can put on your phone that you can then use to edit your photos. In addition to that, there's an app called Pixel Loop and Motion Leap that will make and take a still photo, and you can edit it to make elements in that photo move. In addition to that, of course, Canva is a great app to have on your phone that allows for you to add elements to your photos and videos. So let's keep talking about videos in this case. Filmic Pro is a great app for editing video. In addition to that, you have VN Editor. That one is free. Filmic Pro is not free. Premiere Rush, again, if you have access to Adobe, that's a great one to use. Cut Story is a great app because it allows for you to cut your video to fit social media. So say you're doing an Instagram story, it'll take a longer video and it'll cut it into pieces. And from the app, you can upload it into Instagram. Splice is a great app. And again, as I said before, Canva is always amazing to use. So I want to give you a couple examples of a few of these apps that I use. So here we have Snapseed. Again, it's free to use and it's amazing. So in this case, I took a picture of my breakfast. I was out at a restaurant with a family member and I put the plate down like, this is very beautiful. I love the patterns. So I took a photo of it and then I went to Snapseed and I made some changes in the colors and how it looked. And it created something beautiful. It almost looked like a painting. So again, Snapseed, I still believe is still free. So that's a great app for you to use. Here's an example of Pixaloop. This is a still photo, but using Pixaloop, I was able to make the background clouds move in the sky and then confetti fall. In addition to that, I was able to make the leaves and the trees move. Again, this is not a video. This was a photo that I was actually able to use, and using Pixaloop or even Motion Leap, you can make those elements move. So it's a really cool way of taking something that's still and making it more dynamic. So with everything that I've shared today, how will you use it? What are you going to go out there and do today or tomorrow or during the holidays or special occasions or just walking out down the street? How are you and what are you planning on using today or tomorrow and applying these techniques to your life? Once you do that, I would like to see what you create. So if you have any questions, you can use hashtag tips with Tony and send them to me, or you can follow me and definitely connect with me on LinkedIn or send me an email at hello@antoniorez.com. Again, I hope you've gained something from this presentation. I hope something that I've taught you today, you will apply, and I would love to see what you do. So again, use the hashtag tips with Tony, or if you have questions about digital marketing or social media or digital strategy, I'm always willing to answer questions. So thank you for your time, and grab your phone, go out in the world and explore. That's it. Have a great day.